there won't be any violence or conduct by the supporters. But yet, we saw that there was a gate crashing and etc.
Okay, what did we promise? No one can promise there'll be no violence. Nobody can. I think what we promised is that we have done our best to provide security, but we said each person has to also be responsible for their own personal security. Now, this is the situation. In any public assembly, for me, it is a joint responsibility of the organizer and the government to ensure security. We don't have the means. We don't have batons, and we don't have, come on, we don't have the means to go to the extent that the police can. It's a joint responsibility. But on that day, the entire responsibility was left to us. It was almost as if the government was saying, okay, let's see how well you can do it, you know what I mean? Because we said we have 5,000, we did our best. We had 6,000 people on the ground. So in that sense, they just left it to us, when it should have been a joint responsibility. So really, as far as we're concerned, we did our best. And things were under control, okay, until the tear gas was shot. It's not even until the barricades were breached, because they could have just stopped those people. In fact, there were other people trying to stop them. But when the tear gas was shot, the responsibility shifted from us. You cannot hold us responsible for what happens after police take action. Then it becomes their responsibility. So everything that happened after that is their responsibility. But I'm not condoning anyone's violence, don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is everything went berserk after that. And what do you expect? You have people jam-packed. You shoot tear gas after tear gas after tear gas into the crowd. What do you expect them to do? And not only did they deal with the issue of the breach there, they then, Operation Tear Gas took place all over and continuously, even upon people who were retreating. And I am hearing stories about the barrier, since you mentioned it. Yes, there were people who breached it. We don't support that. But things were already going on at the barrier because people were being misled. Apparently, in certain areas, the barriers were being opened. Okay, and people were being given the impression they could go in.
Which area?
Around Dataran. But we're getting stories about that.
The Bar Council side or Jalan?
Could be Bar Council, could be, we're getting the information about that. So there's a lot more going on there than meets the eye.
250,000 crowd is too big for Besih to handle.
It could be, because we didn't expect that size, seriously. But having said that, all right, I mean, obviously, look, we have to accept, maybe we could have also done things better. I'm not saying no, all right? You have to look at yourself as much as you look at everybody else. But having said that, look at how well behaved they were. Look at how well behaved 250,000 people were, okay? It was amazing. Because I know, I was watching them. I could see them, all right? And they were just having fun, you know? They were having fun, and don't forget, they didn't just gather at 2 o'clock. They were there from about 10 o'clock. Many people were already there and there was no problem. No problem. So are you saying these people who were gathering there for 4 hours before 2 o'clock suddenly turned violent? Come on. I don't buy that, not for a minute.
Do you agree that Besih failed to control the crowd?
I told you, we controlled it fine. But once the control went out of our hands when the police acted, it's no more our responsibility. It cannot be, because we didn't cause the tear gas to be fired. And it's so conceivable. You fire tear gas, of course everybody is going to go. And in fact, I had already dispersed the crowd, and people were slowly but surely moving off. You should have just left them alone, and they would have left.
I'm curious that why you called the rally so early.
Yes.
Because the event was supposed until
That's right.
4 p.m., right?
Yes. I made a judgment call. I made a judgment call because of the numbers, as I said, and also because people had been there for a long time. I was worried people would start fainting. It was hot. And I could see that it would take time to disperse this size of a crowd. And I thought we had achieved our purpose. And so that's one of the reasons that I decided to disperse the crowd at that time. But I know I'm criticized for that, yeah. I mean, from my account, people didn't disperse initially, all right, because they couldn't believe, because it was early. But I could see that because we couldn't, you know, we had some, I think a concert, I mean, we had a performance, and none of that could take place. So you can't keep the crowd entertained for 2 hours just standing there. I could also see that a lot of people had come in earlier. I could also see older people and younger people. So I thought it was time to disperse. I also knew, because of the crowd, that dispersal would take time. Would take maybe an hour, you know. So it's good for people to start moving. And I could see they were jam-packed. So that's why I gave the order to disperse. It took people time, but some people did apparently disperse. And the message got down. I think perhaps one of our failings is we didn't communicate these things very well to the people, because we only had those loud hailers. Because apparently the vehicle that we had planned to bring in, which had all the speakers, couldn't come in. So there were those things that happened. So in that sense, I think if given time, it would have been fine. If people had just been given time. So I made the announcement, and I made it 2 or 3 times. Then after that, I think Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim arrived. And obviously once he arrives, people want to hear him, right? In fact, someone said, why did you allow him to speak? I said, are you kidding, you know? They are elected MPs. Even if a Barisan MP had turned up, I would have let them speak, because they are the elected representatives of the people. So he then came up there, and then we realized that the people were not dispersing quickly. So we made a decision with, I mean, and Dato Sri Anwar agreed, that we would turn right into Butter Road, go to the middle, speak to the people and tell them also to disperse, and slowly people would disperse. You see, it was already beginning to happen. That was the plan. That was the plan. Then we were going to turn right, and then I saw someone from the corner of my eye run towards the barricade. I really didn't want to be associated with that, but in any event, my bodyguard saw a potential danger, because and we got hauled off. I got hauled off the truck together with my other, you know, and my other 2 SC members jumped off as well, and we ran off into Masjid India. And as I was running into Masjid India, of course, tear gas came and bedlam and ensued, as it were.
Right after you make the announcement, and then you jump into a vehicle and then left the place.
Oh, no, I was caught right in the tear gas, and I ran off into Masjid India.
It's not true.
And it's not at all true. And I ran up, because my bodyguard, as I said, pulled me off, because when they saw the breach taking place. And in fact, a whole group of ladies, you know, we went into the ladies, there was a ladies in one of the blocks there, and we were one flight up, I think it was. And then we were stuck there. You know, we went there to wash our face, and we were stuck there because, and I was stuck there for an hour and a half, because we could hear the violence going on downstairs, people being beaten up, people being whacked out of shape, okay? I couldn't see who did it, but my bodyguards could see. And you would get people in blue, you know, without tags and stuff like that, 6 or 7 just basically homing in on one person and beating them, and we could hear it. So it was very, very traumatic. And then we had to get out of there, and you know, there was still tear gas being fired. So I never left the place for a while, for a long time.
You were walking towards Masjid India.
I ran to Masjid because the tear gas was,
you were tear gas.
yeah, because they immediately after the breach, the tear gas came. So we were all running to get out of the tear gas.
There was no verbal warning given?
Nothing.
Just
nothing. Yeah, I didn't hear anything.
Programs arranged singing and etc., which were not performed.
It didn't happen, no, it didn't happen. Because of the circumstances, we couldn't get the main lorry. We had a different mobile stage, which couldn't get through the crowd because it was such a big crowd. Such a big crowd. It was such an amazing crowd. I mean, you have to admit.
Do you think that, you know, if these programs were to continue, it may have happened differently?
I think if we were given Dataran, it would have been fine. There would have been no issue. But you know, standing up there, I looked at the scene, crowds on each of those roads, crowds of wonderful Malaysians, and then this green patch of green, which is supposed to represent Merdeka, all empty. Do you know how, what does that tell you? And I was thinking to myself, how silly they are. How silly they are. You don't give us Dataran, we took KL, you know. It's as simple as that. And actually, if they had given us Dataran, we would have had our Duduk Banta, we would have done our little song and dance and left. It would have been no issue. People were already singing. People were already, you know, in that mood. But they were so dogged, they looked silly because the barbed wire was around this one patch of green, you know, and because they were so stubborn that they were not going to let us into that place. I still haven't figured out why, actually. I still haven't got an answer, a proper answer as to why we were kept out of Dataran.
Just now, during a press conference, he said that he believed that the initial criticism by Tun M and the former IGPs, as well as the action to the police during Bersih, and now in their manhunt for Bersih supporters, and some of them were allegedly beaten when they turned themselves in.
Yes.
This is an attempt to vilify Bersih, to pollute the Bersih agenda and make them look like subversive elements.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you look at the mainstream press, Straits Times, and that's why they're so disappointing. And I've stopped buying the Straits Times, by the way. Yes. Previously, I used to see what they said, but I really couldn't stomach the misreporting. But if you look at how they describe Bersih, they call it Bersih riots.
Yeah, Bersih riots.
All right?
Yeah.
So, and that's how TV3 has been portraying it. This whole incident about the overturning of the police car, they don't give the full story.
Yeah.
People thought somebody was stuck under the car, and that's why they moved it. And that happened because the police car was plowing into the people. So really, at the end of the day, clearly that's the agenda. The agenda, because they must have been shocked at the numbers too. So how do you undermine Bersih? You undermine it by calling it all sorts of other things. Well, if they do that, they're really going to cheese off 250,000 people and their family and friends. And really, it's not working. This way of doing things may have worked 20 years ago. It doesn't work anymore because we're in the information age and everybody knows the truth. So, and 250,000 people know the truth. So there you are. I think they really need to change their tactics.
We can have a peaceful assembly if the event is held inside a stadium.
Yeah, you see, this whole thing about the stadium, there's a principle involved here that you cannot forget. Allowing assemblies in stadiums is not freedom of assembly, all right? The principle of freedom of assembly is that you can go to a public space and persuade your government accordingly. Stadium is not freedom of assembly, all right? So to me, when our federal constitution talks about freedom of assembly, it's not talking about the stadium. So to me, it's only half they're only giving you half of it, what you're entitled to. Your full entitlement is actually to go out onto the streets peacefully.
As a party that has been formed on the basis of street demonstrations, like UMNO, is it hypocritical for them to...
Very hypocritical. Very hypocritical. And by the forefathers of those who are in power at the moment, you know, as if it's not part of our culture, when in fact that's precisely part of our culture. So there you are. It is, I think. So what is the achievement of Bersih 3? Bersih 3 shows a jump in awareness from Bersih 2. It is a huge jump in awareness of the public. So for me, Bersih 2 was already an achievement in that it really raised the awareness of the public as far as electoral reform is concerned. Don't forget, electoral reform is a very boring subject. Nobody cares about it, right? But people are very tuned in on electoral reform. So it is the jump in awareness. And I was saying earlier, really, for me, there is a real shift in the middle ground, okay? When I say middle ground, I'm talking about people who are comfortable, who don't necessarily leave their comfortable homes and their nice cars or whatever to take a stand. These people took a stand on that day. For me, if the government is going to choose to ignore them, then I think they're making a big mistake.
What some people are arguing about, saying that Bersih is more of a middle class movement rather than a grassroots movement. They're saying that the grassroots are not in support of it, more like the so-called armchair activists, the middle class.
Well, you know what? I think it's both. I think it's all. frankly, if you saw the people who were there, the age was ranged from what, 20 to 70 plus, okay? To me, actually, it was all walks of life, and I think everybody uses the words all walks of life, but I really think they were there that day. So, and as someone said to me, everybody knows someone who went to Bersih, who went to Bersih 3. Even if they didn't go, they know someone who went, all right? That's how widespread it was. And don't forget, it wasn't just KL. This time, it was national. And you saw numbers, few thousand turning up in Penang, few thousand in Perak. You saw, in Johor, you saw East Malaysia. So, you know what? It's all over the country.
MalaysiaKini.com.
Pada Malaysia Kini.
Pada Malaysia Kini, Malaysia Kini.